She was driving home through the deep night after a long business trip, thinking only of hot coffee and hugging her son. And in 1 second, the familiar road transformed into a scene of public humiliation. Flashing lights, gestures, 2 officers, surrounded by their headlights, demanding she exit the vehicle. This powerful hook, where everyday life breaks apart, immediately grabs at the most vulnerable part. The dashboard clock read 11:47 p.m. when Maya Thompson first saw the red and blue lights in her rearview mirror. She'd been driving this same stretch of Meridian Avenue for 8 years, knew every pothole and speed limit sign. Her Honda Civic, reliable, unremarkable, the kind of car that should blend into traffic, slowed to a stop beneath the harsh glare of a streetlight that cast everything in sickly yellow. Captain Maya Thompson, retired Air Force fighter, accustomed to the clarity of orders and discipline, slowly lowered her hands to her knees, showed her service ID, and tried to explain she was rushing home. But Officer Ryan Caldwell looked at her differently, not as a colleague, but as a target. The contempt that begins in small things grows into humiliation. Maya's military training kicked in automatically. Hands visible, engine off, interior light on. She'd done this dance before, the careful choreography of a black woman trying to survive a traffic stop. Her father had taught her the steps when she was 16. Keep your hands where they can see them, speak only when spoken to, don't give them any excuse. 20 years of military service, 2 tours overseas, a Bronze Star gathering dust in her closet. None of it mattered when Officer Ryan Caldwell approached her window with that particular swagger she recognized from a dozen different countries. The walk of a man who'd never been told no, never been questioned, never had his authority challenged by someone he considered beneath him. License and registration, Caldwell said without preamble. No good evening, no explanation for the stop. His partner, a younger officer named Jason Miller, positioned himself at the passenger side, phone already in hand. Maya reached slowly into her purse, narrating each movement. I'm reaching for my wallet now, getting my license. The plastic felt slick with sweat between her fingers. Caldwell barely glanced at the documents. Instead, his eyes swept over her car's interior, looking for something, anything, to justify what was about to happen. The travel mug of coffee from the airport. The presentation materials scattered across the passenger seat. The small framed photo of her son Elijah, taped to the dashboard, his gap-toothed smile beaming up at them. Step out of the vehicle. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. Officer, may I ask why you stopped me? I was observing the speed limit. My registration is current. I said step out of the vehicle. Caldwell's hand moved closer to his weapon, a gesture that wasn't quite a threat, but wasn't exactly reassurance either. The asphalt felt cold under her boots as she stood there, the familiar weight of authority now turned against her. How quickly the protector becomes the target, she thought, remembering her father's warnings about uniform versus skin. The night air carried the smell of exhaust and something else, the metallic scent of fear she'd learned to recognize in combat zones. Miller's phone screen glowed as he started recording. Going live, he murmured to Caldwell, loud enough for Maya to hear. A warning, a threat. The red recording light felt like a sniper's dot on her chest. That's when Maya noticed the medal. It hung on Caldwell's chest, partially obscured by his tactical vest, but unmistakable once you knew what to look for. The Defense Meritorious Service Medal, bronze with red and white stripes. Maya had seen that exact medal before, in a file folder marked Classified that had crossed her desk 3 years ago when she was still active duty. The medal belonged to Sergeant Marcus Webb, who'd been killed by an IED outside Kandahar in 2019. Webb had been scheduled to testify in a case involving missing ammunition and black market weapons sales, a case that had gone nowhere after his death. Maya's blood turned to ice water. This wasn't a random traffic stop. Ma'am, you seem nervous, Caldwell said, loud enough for the live stream audience. Is there something you want to tell us? The chat comments were already rolling in. Maya couldn't see them, but she could feel them. The anonymous cruelty of strangers passing judgment from behind screens. She'd seen enough viral videos to know how this story would be told. Angry black woman resists police. Defiant driver refuses to comply. I'm not nervous, officer. I'm confused about why I've been stopped. Maya's voice stayed level, professional. 20 years of military bearing don't disappear just because you're scared. Miller angled his phone to capture both their faces. The viewer count climbed. 3,000, 5,000, 8,000 people, watching a woman's humiliation in real time. Standard traffic stop, Caldwell said for the camera. Subject was driving erratically, appeared to be texting while driving. The lie hit Maya like a physical blow. She hadn't touched her phone since leaving the airport. It was plugged into the charger, sitting in the cup holder where both officers could see it. That's not true, Maya said quietly. I haven't been on my phone at all. Are you calling me a liar? Caldwell stepped closer, close enough that Maya could smell the coffee on his breath, the stale cigarette smoke clinging to his uniform. Maya's training kicked in again. Different training this time. Not military protocol, but survival instinct. The kind her grandmother had taught her mother, and her mother had taught her, and she'd already started teaching Elijah. How to make yourself smaller, how to deflect anger, how to survive the encounter and worry about justice later. No, sir. I'm just saying I wasn't on my phone. Turn around. Put your hands on the vehicle. Maya's world tilted. This was happening. Actually happening. She was about to be searched, humiliated, possibly arrested on livestream for driving while black on a Tuesday night in America. As she placed her palms against the cool metal of her Honda's roof, Maya felt the weight of her son's bracelet around her wrist. Elijah had given it to her last Christmas, a fitness tracker he'd bought with his allowance money because mommy works too hard and needs to remember to exercise. Maya had upgraded the device with military-grade recording software, a habit from hers intelligence days. The bracelet looked innocuous, just another wearable device, but it could capture audio and GPS data with timestamp accuracy that would hold up in court. She activated it with a subtle double tap against the car's surface. The pat-down was thorough, professional, and completely unnecessary. Caldwell's hands lingered longer than they should have, his movements designed to intimidate rather than search for weapons. Maya stared straight ahead, focusing on the distant sound of traffic on E275, the whistle of a freight train 3 blocks away, the bass line thumping from a house party somewhere in the distance. All of it was being recorded now. What's this? Caldwell held up Maya's military ID, the one she'd shown him 5 minutes earlier. My service identification, as I mentioned. Says here you were Air Force. Caldwell's voice carried a note of surprise, as if he'd expected her credentials to be fake. Yes, sir. 20 years. Retired as captain. Miller's phone caught Caldwell's expression, a flicker of something that might have been respect, quickly suppressed. The livestream audience saw it too, and the comments shifted. Someone had Googled Maya's name, cross-referenced her service record. The narrative was changing in real time. Air Force, huh? Caldwell handed back the ID with obvious reluctance. What did you do? Intelligence. Counter-terrorism operations. Maya turned slightly, enough to make eye contact. I investigated corruption in military procurement contracts. The words hung in the night air like a challenge. Caldwell's jaw tightened, and Maya knew she'd struck a nerve. The metal on his chest, Webb's metal, seemed to gleam brighter under the streetlight. You people always think you're special, Caldwell muttered, but his voice had lost some of its earlier swagger. You people. The phrase hung in the night air like smoke, and Maya felt something shift inside her chest. Not anger. She'd learned to master that emotion years ago. Something colder, more dangerous. Purpose. Maya had heard those words before, in briefing rooms where she was the only woman, in officers' clubs where her achievements were dismissed as diversity hires, in grocery stores where cashiers lingered too long on her credit card, checking and double-checking her name against her face. She'd spent 20 years serving a country that questioned her right to serve, and she was tired of proving her humanity to people who'd already decided she didn't deserve it. The livestream viewer count had climbed to 12,000. Comments rolled past like artillery fire. Another Karen gets stopped. Blue lives matter. Why won't she just comply? But other voices were emerging too. People who recognized her service ribbons, who'd looked up her military record, who were sharing her story with their own networks. The internet was faster than any cover-up. Officer Caldwell, Maya said, her voice carrying the authority she'd used to address subordinates in war zones. I'm requesting your supervisor. Your request is denied. Caldwell stepped closer, deliberately invading her personal space. The camera caught his movement, caught the calculated aggression. You're being detained for suspicious behavior. What suspicious behavior? Failure to comply with lawful orders. I've complied with every order you've given me. Are you resisting arrest? The trap was closing. Maya could feel it. the familiar weight of a no-win scenario. Answer yes, and she's resisting. Answer no, and she's admitting guilt for something she hasn't done. Stay silent, and her silence becomes evidence of defiance. But Maya had played this game in darker places than suburban Atlanta, against adversaries with more to lose than a small-town cop's ego. I am complying with your orders, Officer Caldwell. I am requesting clarification about what I'm being arrested for, which is my constitutional right. Maya's words were precise, professional, designed for the audience she knew was watching. Not just the livestream viewers, but the people who would watch the clips later, the lawyers who would review the footage, the journalists who would ask questions. Evidence. Everything was evidence now. The train whistle sounded again, and Maya's enhanced hearing, trained to detect IED signatures and enemy movement, picked up something else. A garage door opening and closing in the residential area behind them. The Henderson house, if she remembered the neighborhood correctly. 3 houses down from where they'd stopped her. Her bracelet was recording it all. Caldwell's radio crackled to life. Unit 47, what's your status? Miller looked nervous for the first time, glancing between his partner and his phone screen. The viewer count was still climbing, and the comments were becoming harder to ignore. Someone had posted Maya's military commendations. Someone else had shared a news article about her work with veterans organizations. The narrative was slipping away from them. Unit 47, requesting supervisor to scene, Caldwell finally responded. Maya felt a small surge of satisfaction. She'd won this round, but the fight was far from over. While they waited for the supervisor, Maya studied Caldwell more carefully. The metal was definitely Webb's. She'd memorized every detail from the case file. But there were other things, too. The way he kept glancing toward the residential area behind them. The nervous tick in Miller's left eye. The fact that they'd stopped her on this particular stretch of road at this particular time of night. This wasn't random. This was planned. The supervisor arrived 18 minutes later. Sergeant Patricia Donovan, a 20-year veteran with graying hair and tired eyes, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. She approached Maya's car with the weary resignation of someone who'd seen this movie too many times. "What do we have here?" Donovan asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. "Routine traffic stop," Caldwell said. "Subject was driving erratically, texting while driving. She's been uncooperative." Maya bit back her first response and chose her words carefully. "Sergeant Donovan, I was not texting while driving. My phone has been in the cup holder since I left the airport. I've complied with every order given to me. I simply asked for clarification about why I was being stopped and requested a supervisor when Officer Caldwell became aggressive." Donovan's eyes flicked to Miller's phone, still live streaming to thousands of viewers. The red recording light reflected off her badge as she weighed her options. "Turn off the stream," she told Miller quietly. "Ma'am, it's already live. We can't just turn it off." Miller tapped his screen, and the feed died. But Maya knew the damage was done. Screenshots were already spreading across social media. Videos had been screen recorded and uploaded to backup accounts. The internet never forgot. The sudden silence felt ominous. Without the performative aspect of the livestream, anything could happen now. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to provide a breath sample," Donovan said, pulling out a portable breathalyzer. "I haven't been drinking," Maya replied. "Standard procedure." Maya took the test, knowing it would come back clean. She'd had 1 glass of wine with dinner at the airport 4 hours ago. The machine beeped, 0.00. Donovan frowned at the result, then looked at Caldwell. Some silent communication passed between them, the kind of wordless conversation that happens between cops who've worked together for years. "Search the vehicle," Donovan ordered. Maya's heart sank. She knew her rights, knew she could refuse, but she also knew how that refusal would be interpreted, especially with Caldwell's hand still hovering near his weapon. "I do not consent to a search," Maya said clearly, "for any recording devices that might still be running." "We have probable cause," Donovan replied. "Suspicious behavior, possible DUI." The breathalyzer came back clean. Drugs impaired driving too. They tore her car apart with methodical efficiency. Every piece of paper examined, every crevice explored, every personal item handled, like potential evidence. Maya watched them rifle through her son's soccer gear, her work presentations, the card Elijah had made her for Mother's Day. They found nothing, of course, because there was nothing to find. But the search had served its purpose. Maya had been humiliated, degraded, reminded of her place in the social hierarchy. The message was clear. We can do this to you anytime we want, for any reason we want, and there's nothing you can do to stop us. Except Maya had spent 20 years learning that there's always something you can do. As they finished reassembling her car, Maya's bracelet continued recording. The audio quality was military grade, sensitive enough to pick up conversations from 50 feet away. It had captured every word, every sound, every piece of evidence she would need, including the garage door. "You're free to go," Donovan finally said, handing back Maya's documents. Maya wanted to say something cutting, something that would wound them the way they'd wounded her. Instead, she simply said, "Thank you, Sergeant." She drove home in silence, her hands shaking slightly as she gripped the steering wheel. The familiar streets of her neighborhood looked different now, somehow sinister. How many other people had been stopped on this same stretch of road? How many had been searched, humiliated, arrested on trumped-up charges? How many hadn't had a live stream to protect them? Maya's house sat in darkness when she pulled into the driveway. Elijah was asleep, of course. It was well past midnight now. Her sister Carmen had been babysitting and had left a note on the kitchen counter. "Everything fine. Elijah did homework, brushed teeth, said prayers. Left you some leftover lasagna in fridge. Call me tomorrow. Love you." Maya sat at her kitchen table and played back the audio from her bracelet, using noise-canceling headphones to isolate different sound sources. The train whistle at 11:52 p.m., she could verify that with Norfolk Southern's schedule. The bass line from the house party. Social media posts would probably timestamp when it started and ended. And the garage door, opening and closing at 12:03 a.m., while Caldwell was searching her car. The Henderson house, 1247 Meridian Avenue. Maya pulled up the property records on her laptop. The house belonged to Janet Caldwell, Ryan Caldwell's wife. Her blood turned to ice again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was anticipation. Maya had learned something important during her years in military intelligence. Corruption always leaves a trail. You just have to know where to look. She spent the next 3 hours building a timeline, cross-referencing public records, social media posts, and archived news articles. Ryan Caldwell had been investigated twice for excessive force, but cleared both times by internal affairs. His wife Janet worked as a bookkeeper for a small construction company that had won several city contracts, despite being the highest bidder. The same construction company that was renovating the police station. The same company that had a storage facility 3 blocks from where Maya had been stopped. The same facility where that garage door had opened and closed at 12:03 a.m. Maya smiled grimly as the pieces fell into place. Webb's metal. The late-night traffic stop. The residential area where drugs or weapons could be stored away from police property rooms. The wife who handled financial transactions that would never be officially recorded. She'd stumbled onto something much bigger than a routine harassment stop. Maya uploaded encrypted copies of her audio files to 3 different cloud servers, then composed an email to Detective Carla Reeves at the FBI's Atlanta field office. Reeves had worked with Maya on a case involving military contractor fraud 2 years ago. She was smart, thorough, and most importantly, she wasn't local law enforcement. The email was brief. "Carla, I've attached some audio files you might find interesting. They're related to the Marcus Webb case we discussed last year. Let me know if you need any additional information. Maya." Maya hit send at 3:47 a.m., then finally allowed herself to pour that cup of coffee she'd been craving since the airport. It tasted like victory. She was upstairs checking on Elijah when her phone buzzed with a text from her sister. "Saw the video. Are you okay? Do you need me to come over?" "Video?" Maya frowned and checked her social media notifications. Her heart stopped. The live stream had been brief, but it had been enough. Someone had screen recorded the entire encounter and uploaded it to YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter. Midnight Justice was trending. The video had been viewed over 50,000 times in the past 3 hours. Maya scrolled through the comments, her emotions swinging wildly between gratitude and horror. Thousands of people had seen her lowest moment, her humiliation broadcast for entertainment, but they'd also seen the truth. "This is what happens to our veterans," one comment read. 20 years of service, and this is the thanks she gets," said another. "Look how calm she stayed. That's real strength. Those cops need to be fired. Where was this? We need to call that police department." Maya's phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Ms. Thompson? This is Rebecca Martinez from Channel 11 News. I'd like to ask you about what happened last night." Maya hung up without responding. The phone rang again immediately. Different number. Maya Thompson? This is David Chen from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Maya turned off her phone and sat in the darkness of her son's room, watching Elijah sleep. His face was peaceful, innocent, unmarked by the knowledge of what the world could do to people who looked like his mother. On his nightstand sat a drawing he'd made in art class, a woman in military uniform holding a briefcase labeled Justice. The woman was smiling, surrounded by an American flag and a rainbow. At the bottom, in his careful second-grade handwriting, he'd written, "My hero mom." Maya's eyes filled with tears, not from sadness, but from a fierce protective love that burned in her chest like rocket fuel. She would not let them break her son's faith in heroes. Maya spent the next morning fielding calls from reporters, lawyers, and activists. The story had gone viral overnight, with hashtags and protest organizations picking up her case as an example of systemic police misconduct. She turned down most interview requests, but agreed to speak with Rebecca Martinez, who seemed more interested in the facts than in sensationalism. "What do you want to come of this?" Martinez asked during their phone conversation. "I want accountability," Maya replied. "I want systemic change. And I want my son to grow up in a world where this doesn't happen to other families." "Are you planning to file a complaint?" "I've already filed complaints with Internal Affairs, the mayor's office, and federal authorities," Maya said. "I've also retained legal counsel." What she didn't mention was Detective Reeves's phone call at 6 a.m. The FBI was very interested in Maya's audio files, particularly the timestamps that could be cross-referenced with other ongoing investigations. "The Webb case has been reopened," Reeves had told her quietly. "Your evidence fills in some gaps we've been struggling with. Thank you." Maya's vindication came in waves over the following weeks. First, the department announced that officers Caldwell and Miller had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The announcement came just hours after Maya's story aired on the evening news, complete with her audio recording and the verified timeline of events. Second, the city council voted unanimously to require body cameras for all traffic stops, with footage to be automatically uploaded to a civilian oversight board. Third, and most satisfying, Ryan Caldwell was arrested on federal charges of evidence tampering, drug trafficking, and violation of civil rights. The case involved the storage facility, the construction contracts, and a network of corruption that stretched from City Hall to the police evidence room. Marcus Webb's family finally got their justice. His medal was returned to them in a ceremony that made the front page of the newspaper. But the most important victory was smaller, more personal. Maya was picking Elijah up from school when she noticed a change in how the other parents looked at her. Not with pity or awkwardness, but with something approaching respect. Several people approached her to express support, to share their own stories, to thank her for speaking up. "Mommy," Elijah said as they walked to the car, "Mrs. Patterson says you're famous now." "Not famous, baby. Just trying to do the right thing." "Like a superhero?" Maya thought about it, remembering the weight of Caldwell's hand on her shoulder, the humiliation of the search, the fear that had tasted like metal in her mouth. Then she thought about the audio files, the federal investigation, the policy changes that would protect other families. "Not like a superhero," she said, taking her son's hand. "Like a citizen." That evening, Maya sat in her home office, reviewing the final draft of an op-ed she'd written for the newspaper. The title was simple: Service and protection should mean everyone. Outside her window, the street looked the same as always, but Maya knew something fundamental had shifted, not just in her neighborhood, but in the broader conversation about justice and accountability. Her phone buzzed with a text from Detective Reeves. "Caldwell pleaded guilty this afternoon. 18 months federal prison, plus restitution. Thought you'd want to know?" Maya smiled and typed back, "Thank you for everything." She was about to close her laptop when she noticed a new email in her inbox. The sender was listed as a friend, but when she opened it, she recognized the writing style immediately. "Ms. Thompson, you don't know me, but I'm a police officer in Birmingham. I saw your video and wanted you to know that most of us aren't like Caldwell and Miller. What happened to you was wrong, and I'm glad you fought back. I've been thinking about some things I've seen in my own department, and your courage has inspired me to speak up. Thank you for showing us what integrity looks like." Maya printed the email and pinned it to the bulletin board above her desk, next to Elijah's drawing and her military commendations. Evidence that change was possible, one conversation at a time. Later that night, as she was tucking Elijah into bed, he looked up at her with serious eyes. "Mommy, why were those policemen mean to you?" Maya had been dreading this question, but she was ready for it. "Sometimes, baby, people make bad choices. They let fear or anger make them forget that their job is to help people, not hurt them." "But you helped fix it, right?" "I tried to, and other people helped too. That's how things get better, when lots of people work together to do what's right." Elijah nodded solemnly, then brightened. "Like the Avengers," Maya laughed. "Exactly like the Avengers." As she turned off his light and headed downstairs, Maya reflected on the irony of the situation. Caldwell had stopped her that night to intimidate her, to remind her of her place in his version of the social order. Instead, he'd given her a platform, evidence, and a cause. He'd turned her into exactly the kind of person he'd been trying to silence. Maya poured herself a glass of wine and stepped out onto her back patio, looking up at the stars that were barely visible through Atlanta's light pollution. She thought about Marcus Webb, who died before he could testify about the corruption he'd uncovered, about all the traffic stops that happened without live streams or audio recordings, about all the families who didn't have the resources or knowledge to fight back. Her work wasn't finished. In many ways, it was just beginning. Maya raised her glass to the night sky in a silent toast, to Webb, to justice, to the long arc of moral progress that bent toward righteousness only when people were willing to grab it and pull. Then she went inside to plan her next battle. The story remained about the same things, inequality and personal strength, but now it was filled with new explosive turns: staging, falsifying evidence, public broadcasting, and unexpected public response turned personal humiliation into a field for exposure, and one woman's quiet determination became a catalyst for change. Maya Thompson learned that night that heroes aren't born in moments of glory. They're forged in moments when ordinary people refuse to accept that injustice is just the way things are. 6 months later, Maya was invited to speak at the FBI Academy about corruption investigations and civilian cooperation. As she stood at the podium, looking out at the young agents in training, she thought about the bracelet still wrapped around her wrist, charged, ready, recording. "Justice," she told them, "isn't something that happens to you. It's something you make happen. And sometimes the most important evidence comes from the most unexpected sources." In the audience, Detective Reeves smiled and took notes. And somewhere in federal prison, Ryan Caldwell learned that corruption, like truth, always leaves a trail. Maya's son's drawing still hangs in her office, next to her military commendations and her business degree. Visitors often ask about it, and Maya tells them the same thing every time. That's what faith looks like. That's what we're fighting for. And every night, as she tucks Elijah into bed, she remembers that the most important battles aren't won in courtrooms or boardrooms. They're won in the hearts of children who still believe their parents can change the world. Sometimes they're right.